hosting this national conversation, UN75 National Youth Conversation, Youth Engagement for Peace Building, Shaping Peace Together. Happy International Peace Day again to everybody. I think I've probably said that a couple of times today because it's 4:15 on my side of the world, and there are so many, because young people are so vibrant and active that we have so much activities going on today. But of course, as I always say, IYC has a special place in our heart because it remains to be the only international youth center, and it has been very supportive of meaningful youth engagement. So without further ado, I think it is but right to introduce our opening address. So he could give us a little bit more background about the International Youth Center. We've been working with him very closely through Asian Youth Peace Network, which is one of the networks that I convene, in order for us to have a more global youth-led peace campaign, which we call IYC for Peace. So later after this, we have another webinar with IYC actually. It will be showcased at Friends for Leadership on Facebook. So without further ado, the opening address will be given by Dr. Muhammad Maliki bin Muhammad Rabi'i, Director of International Youth Center, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
Hello, good evening. I'm Maliki. Thank you, Regine, for your introduction. So I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to all of you for joining this session, especially to our His Excellency Mr. Stefan Priestner from United Nations Resident Coordinator for Malaysia, Singapore and Brunei Darussalam. And we really want to hear from you, sir, about what is the recent issues and direction for us, especially in SDG and United Nations, in conjunction of this UN75. And also, very good evening to Professor Dr. Denison Jayasuriya, Co-Chair for Malaysia CSO SDG Alliance, our gurus in SDGs in Malaysia. Thank you, Datuk, for your time. And to all panelists, Ms. Roman Smita from the Global Laws Thinker Society Bangladesh, Mr. Shariman, the alumni MyCops Malaysia, and Dr. Roman Shukov, founder of Friends for Leadership Russian Federation. And surely, Ms. Regine, thank you for your time because I know you are very busy today. And Ms. Regine is our alumni for International Youth Center. IYC was instituted for the last 33 years. This is a foundation under the Ministry's Youth and Sports Malaysia. And now this is our commitment to achieve SDG and to support UN. That's why I still remember when our UNDP representative in Malaysia came to Ministry Youth and Sports Malaysia and suggest to us for us to focus on three major issues related to youth. First is orang asli, youth among orang asli, young women, and also youth in the remote area in Sabah and Sarawak, meaning that in Borneo. So until now, we still have undergoing project focused on several SDG pillars, and we are very happy because we can see the development from one year to another year, and surely because of your support, Regine and all our friends in Malaysia, also from our regional partners. That's why in conjunction of this UN75 for IYC, we aim to be a center for excellence in peace by working at international, regional, and national level to bridge the capacity of the next generation of peace builders and leaders. And I hope, Mr. Stephen, you will have time to come and visit us here, not very far from your place. And for this, we really thank to our founder, to our people for the last 33 years. They have a very clear views about how to develop young people. For the last 33 years, there are one person from Fukuoka donated 1 billion yen to build this center. And I hope we can create another person like him to create another journey, another good future for our generation. So that's why IYC now want to give our commitment to make sure young people, not only in Malaysia, but at regional level, to have the same philosophy and the same spirit to make sure our young people, our next generation, have a very good understanding about peace. So that's why I want to end this my speech with to congratulate everybody, and I hope this dialogue, even it was a very small dialogue, but give a very big meaning to us in understanding about peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maliki. Dr. Maliki, as I've mentioned, he's the director of IYC, but he is also the Secretary General of the Asian Youth Council with affiliation of 49 Asian countries. And I believe he used to be also with Majelis Belia Malaysia. Okay, so from the opening remarks, sorry. I would like to call on our keynote speaker, His Excellency Mr. Stefan Priestner. He is the UN Resident Coordinator for Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei Darussalam. He has extensive experience in international development and management issues and has been working with the UNDP since 1996. He has provided policy advice to governments and overseen the formulation and delivery of a range of complex multidisciplinary development programs in close partnership with government, bilateral, multilateral, and other partners in various countries in Asia Pacific and Eastern Europe. Mr. Priestner, thank you so much for gracing us today. Happy International Peace Day. I think you will need to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Regine, for the nice introduction. And I'm very happy to be here and meet you all. Like to say hello to, of course, my dear friend, Dr. Denison Jayasuriya, the co-chair of the Malaysia CSO SDG Alliance, to Dr. Mohammed Maliki. Dr. Maliki, I'm happy to pass by at the center, and thank you for the invitation to deliver a keynote here. And of course, a very warm hello to all the kind of speakers, Roman, Shariman, and Roaman. And of course, Regine as the facilitator. Now, I thought I kind of try to organize my remarks into three kind of broad elements, to talk a little bit first on some reflection on the peace mandate of the UN and focus especially on prevention. I liked, because I think it's really a continuum how the UN sees development and peace and conflict prevention. Then secondly, to talk a bit on let's say how this looks in the context of COVID, and then thirdly talk a bit about the role of youth, how the UN sees the role of youth in terms of peace building. So let me start by, of course, wishing everybody a very happy Peace Day. This is not only Peace Day today, but it's the start of a very important work, possibly, most important week, possibly one of the most busy weeks in the year, because we have, of course, the General Assembly in New York. We have later today a special session, a commemoration of UN75, and a high-level meeting where I also want to already congratulate upfront Sharifa Noriza, a social business entrepreneur from Malaysia, who will deliver the address on behalf of the youth. Also, the Prime Minister of Malaysia will be there in this special session, together with many other heads of state and head of government. So this is a very important week, and I think it's great that Peace Day, is of course the Monday of this week as we start into this big week. Everybody knows that the peace is the core mandate of the UN. There are different, I think, perceptions of how we have progressed on this. I think it's fair to say that a lot has been done in terms of maintaining peace, and also conceptually, I think, understanding of what the drivers are of conflict prevention. I think we are hugely progressed with this, how to deal with kind of peacekeeping, peacemaking once conflict happens, but also kind of how to deal with conflict prevention. I just mentioned here that up to now 70 peacekeeping missions try to mitigate a conflict. 13 are still running, and a very important role has been played by Malaysia traditionally in peacekeeping, and I want to take to pay tribute to this. I think it's only fair on International Peace Day. In my UN career, it has been by now a quite long career since 1996. I was posted in different countries where kind of the issue of peace and conflict was, I think, of different importance. And I wanted to start with a personal experience from my time in Bosnia, which was between 2004 and 2008. And the reason why I'm doing that is to really kind of bridge conflict prevention, how quickly peace can give way to conflict. So this story is about a colleague of mine who, in 2004, when I came to Bosnia, told me that how the war in Bosnia started. She was a doctor working in a community clinic in Sarajevo, and she told me that one afternoon, one of her nurses comes to her and says she won't come to work next day because there will be war. And she said, why there had been a big build-up in terms of rhetoric in the newspapers, nothing really indicated that conflict was imminent. So she, like any other day, came to the office and to the clinic the next day. The nurse didn't come, and around midday, suddenly she heard a huge blast and then a long siren. And this was the first artillery shot from the hills around Sarajevo and Sarajevo. And from that first shot, there was then 1,400 day, almost more than 4 years siege of Sarajevo. So I think this story for me kind of is a striking one that still kind of I'm keeping in memory, because she described it as an almost surreal situation, of how quickly as a peace slipped away and conflict crept in, and then nobody could stop it anymore. And this is why today, and this is, I think, very much the vision of the Secretary General, he is really focusing on conflict prevention, because with the argument that once a conflict has been started, it is extremely difficult to stop it again. So I think on Peace Day, we should, especially in a country like Malaysia, which is an example of a peaceful society, we should focus on more kind of the conflict prevention angle. And now the question is, what is the blueprint for conflict prevention? And the UN, I think, has a better blueprint than ever before, and that is the Sustainable Development Goals, with its focus on inclusive and sustainable development, but also on peaceful societies. And as you all know, the 16th SDG is the SDG on peaceful societies, which stresses the importance of good governance, of fundamental freedoms, of tolerant and inclusive societies, because such societies will be resilient to conflicts, and are likely also to calibrate their responses in a better and more proportionate way if something dramatic happens. As I mentioned, Malaysia certainly has done exceptionally well in managing a very diverse society and managing unity in diversity. But I think what is also an important message is that the work never stops, and we always need to continue to work on peace. Now, of course, this year's Peace Day comes at a very kind of unique time in the shadow of COVID-19, a crisis that no one saw coming even 8 months ago or 9 months ago. And I think it's fair to say that never before in recent history we have felt collectively so vulnerable in the fight of an invisible enemy. Now, this has prompted the Secretary General to call for a ceasefire throughout the world. I think you all know that, but it's just important to stress this. He reiterated many times, and he will do so in the current General Assembly, that we should unite against this common enemy of ours that does not actually care about warring parties, does not take sides, but if there are wars and conflicts, the two sides will only weaken each other to fight together against this invisible enemy. And here again, I would also like to acknowledge Malaysia's role. Malaysia has been among the driver countries to garner membership support to this initiative of a global ceasefire. But COVID-19 has provided not only stress to kind of societies in conflict, but also to many societies in peace. And we have seen in many societies rifts that were breaking up in terms of, for example, patterns such as xenophobia, such as increasing inequalities, such as exacerbated vulnerabilities. And this is why, and this goes back to the SDG argument, it's so important, I think, to build a society with solidarity and a culture of peace. Now, what do I mean with that, a culture of solidarity? I think we have seen that solidarity is key as a foundation for peaceful and successful countries and societies in general. It's a precursor for inclusion and respect, given by a deeply rooted and shared commitment to joint endeavor and equity between peoples and citizens. And it can be applied to both the domestic sphere as well as the international sphere. At state level, at nation state level, it is about, I think, two things, about the policy approach and about the delivery mechanism. And at the heart of this is non-discrimination between ethnicities, between communities, between areas and individuals, really to build an equitable society. And secondly, I think it requires the building of the basic foundations of delivery of core services, of education, health, and other services, of a core social protection system, and also a prosperity-based economy that is inclusive and reaches out to those that maybe are not kind of included. So I think it is vital. This is vital for every state. This is a recipe for every state, but it's especially important for states with different communities, different ethnic communities. And I think Malaysia is a good example of a successful multi-ethnic state. It has always made strides to deliver opportunities to its different peoples, and has also recognized the need to support groups that are left behind. More recently, I think it has also had a focus on building key institutions of governance and justice, which I think is a key to a vibrant country. So the ingredients are there, but again, I think the challenge is that times and conditions change. and development is actually a never-ending kind of road. And the core commitment to these principles need to be retained, while the targets and the policies need to be adjusted and need to evolve. So it's a bit like it's a little bit like a marriage. You can be married very happily for 20 years, and then there comes a crisis, and you know, you have a crisis in the 21st year. By the way, I've just completed 21 years, so so it really requires constant effort and actions. It cannot be taken for granted, and I think this also applies between nations, of relationship between nations, not only within nations, with neighbors, within the region. Dialogue and openness to compromise always has to be there. We need key tools for building solidarity, and I think multilateralism is a key tool of that, one of the most important tools. I just want to kind of give tribute here to ASEAN, which I think is an excellent example, where you know, different countries have played pivotal roles some 40 years ago, where Southeast Asia was in turmoil. You know, countries really have gone together and formed this very, very powerful regional community. But again, the world and geopolitical kind of patterns are in constant flux, and we need an ongoing engagement, and further strengthening of global mechanisms and regional mechanisms are absolutely vital. So again, the role of the UN, not only to help countries implement certain international standards at state level, but also as a platform for international cooperation. This brings me to the third point, and that is the role of youth. What can youth play? What role can it play in terms of youth and peace? And I think this is also becoming much more clear in the last few years for the United Nations. You all know that in 2015, the UN Security Council took a significant step and recognized the value of youth in participation in peace and security affairs by adopting a very important UN Security Council resolution, Resolution 2250, which urges member states to give youth a greater role in decision making, and urges member states also to have them participate meaningfully and comprehensively in peace processes. And since then, the youth, peace and security agenda has been picked up. It's part of the 2030 youth strategy, one of the strategic thrusts, thrust number 5. And there's also now a joint UN action plan on youth, peace and security, which includes many different UN entities and calls for implementation at national level. In ASEAN, there has also been things going on youth, peace and security. But I think it's fair to say that there's a big scope for a population group that makes up 34% of the ASEAN population to do more on the issue of youth, peace and security. And that's why it's so important that you know, this dialogue is taking place today. So congratulations to the organizers. What is the message? Why is the UN believing in youth as a key kind of messenger and builder of peace? Number one, obviously, youth is the future generation of hope and of change for a world that is developed and lives in harmony. Youth is a politically powerful bracket in developing nations, comprising a large bloc, can deliver political support and will to peace, and it can also mobilize huge numbers of people. It can be a multiplier, as we call it in the UN. And we also believe that youth, as open thinkers, untainted by perhaps deeply rooted prejudices, is able to cross communities and provide facilitation for cross-national understanding. And finally, of course, the youth is very linked into the global culture via technology, through social media, and very much in a global, has grown up in a globalized world where perhaps older generation have still a little bit more kind of challenges. So youth is a hugely important stakeholder in taking the peace agenda forward. And along the lines of what I have pointed out in terms of the SDGs segment and the recovery of COVID segment, I really encourage everybody to work on prevention of conflicts, and if youth happens to live in a conflict-ridden society, also in peace building. Finally, I would like to end my deliberations by drawing the attention of all the viewers on our 75th anniversary year. It is, of course, UN at 75, and that's one of the reasons why we have this conversation. And want to take the opportunity to really kind of provide a direct link between participants of this webinar and the United Nations. And this link exists in a very simple way, namely through the 1-minute survey, the UN75 1-minute survey. May I kind of encourage everybody to give feedback to the United Nations where the focus should be in the next 25 years until we have our 100th anniversary in 2045, and what actually the role of the UN should be. So I thank you all for the invitation, and I'm looking forward to the panelists making some additional interventions. Greetings from Kuala Lumpur.
Thank you, Mr. Priestner. Hope I pronounced your surname correctly. Okay. Okay, with after those two high-level speakers, I think it's about time to hear from the young people themselves as well. So we have a mix of international and national youth for panelists. I think we could start with Malaysia's very own. So we have a young Malaysian, Mr. Shariman Sharul Zaman, from an alumni of My Corps Malaysia. Shariman has been a prime advocate in volunteering for a cause. First, he joined ASEAN Youth Leadership Association as a Malaysian representative in promoting youth leadership in ASEAN, as well as climate change advocacy under Malaysian Youth Delegation. He's currently a My Corps alumni, where he was part of a humanitarian program representing his country in helping people in Lao PDR under the Ministry of Youth and Sports Malaysia. Currently, he works under MAGIC, Malaysian Global Innovation Creativity Center, and is a project coordinator in helping local startups grow and expand in ASEAN. So there. So Shariman, maybe you can expound more about your work in Malaysia, and then also as it relates to the region, to ASEAN, because our keynote speakers also mentioned ASEAN a while ago.
Oh, okay. So first of all, thank you so much for introducing me, Eugene. That's so good to see you. Me and Regine, we've known each other a bit in Facebook, but we've never actually talked. So a bit about what I do is that I'm currently right now working under MAGIC, which is an initiative under the Malaysian Technology Association, in which place we are trying to grow and initiate startups both locally and internationally to open their businesses both in Malaysia and outside of Malaysia within ASEAN. So what I do right now is mostly towards knowing what type of businesses startups have and that can give in around ASEAN. Other than that, on my voluntary side, I'm now currently under My Corps alumni, in which case we're trying our best to find other social movements that we can do around ASEAN as well. So I would like to show some of my slides that I want to do regarding youth advocacy. So here it is, presentation wise. Oopsie. Yep. So can you guys see the slide? All right. So what I'm talking about is more towards volunteering, action, and peace. And mostly what I do in the past 6 to 7 years is volunteering towards both ASEAN and locally as well. So when we talk about volunteering, when we talk about peace and the UN, we mostly want to make a change in towards something that we want to make changes of. And one of the things that UN75 People's Declaration Plan for Global Action says otherwise is the time has come to launch a non-partisan, transparent, inclusive process to identify global governance gaps and develop a coherent strategy to fill them in realizing the vision of the UN Charter. So it's important for us to know that we want to identify what's the gap between global governance, between the government and local stakeholders, and to fill in those strategies and to initiate change that we can make through our social community. So one of the things that we can do is that maybe, who knows, establish a global, regional, local youth peace and security network. In which case, I have to applaud Regine for making it happen because she did Asian Youth Peace Network on Facebook, in which I joined. That's how I know more about all these ASEAN UN peace types of initiatives around the world. And it's important that we're going to develop practical mechanisms to recognize and appreciate youth peace work by, in a way, maybe we can give awards and grants in giving youths who make a difference in youth peace and security. So moving on. So I want to talk about youth advocacy. And since one of my first ever volunteers 4 or 5 years ago was to be part of Malaysian youth delegation, in which case it's a climate change policy advocacy NGO, in which we're trying to initiate to the Malaysian government to follow the Paris Accords under the UNFCCC and various other climate change based initiatives that they promise to do. So one of the key things that we can do under a youth advocacy is to create an enabling environment. So how do we do to create an enabling environment is that ensures an environment that enables the whole of society to contribute to sustainable development and build resilient communities. How do we do that? One of the key aspects of an enabling environment is to have good governance as a public service in being committed in empowering all, especially minorities and underprivileged communities. And one other key aspects is to have an inclusive society, which is necessary in a sustainable development in building an effective, accountable, and inclusive institution for all. Secondly, I want to talk about upholding commitments made. So this is one of the important parts about youth advocacy, and that I think should be part of our youth action is that we should uphold commitments made. One of the commitments that we should reaffirm is maybe UNFCCC's Paris Agreement, the UN's 2030 Agenda, and possibly for more ASEAN-centric, our promise in promoting women, peace, and security. And how do we do this? And upholding commitments made is by engaging with grassroots and those who are mostly profoundly impacted by the policies and the applications. And who knows, maybe we can implement strengthened partnerships among governments and stakeholders at all levels and rededicate ourselves to achieving international agreements made. Thirdly, I want to talk about ideate social solutions. So mostly a lot of old people, when they ask young people, okay, you guys are young, you guys have ideas, why not come up with social ideas? And it's not as easy as it sounds, because young people also need assistance from old people who know more details about their own research and social issues that comes along the way. So when we talk about social solutions, one of the biggest things that we can tackle about is either these two things, climate change and wealth inequality. And then making sure that when we want to ideate social solutions like these, we need to contextualize those social solutions by putting ourselves into their shoes and share various stories that affect these issues. And lastly is universal involvement. We cannot do this alone. Youths are not the only ones that can create a movement. We need as much help as possible from as much stakeholders as possible. So talk to our stakeholders, such as the government, such as your local community advisor, the mayor in a city, the head village of that specific village that is being that there is being that's taking care of a certain village. So all those things we need to have a universal involvement towards everyone, despite religion or race. And here is some of the statistics made by the preliminary assessment of the UN75 survey and dialogue as of April 2020. The survey responses of the three things they most want to see in 25 years. And surprise, surprise, the top one is environmental protection, respect for human rights, and less conflict. These three are one of the main causes of why we want to expect change, want to expect peace, and want to expect a social outcome from these issues. And I want to talk to you guys about two youth advocacy groups happened in Malaysia that actually made a change. Firstly, it's my own NGO called Malaysian Youth Delegation. They're an excellent Malaysian youth representative towards climate change policies, and they have represented and went to Paris itself for the Paris Agreement, especially towards playing a two-part role in representing Malaysia's youth local circle climate movement and raising awareness of climate change policies among Malaysians. And as well as Undi 18, in which case a year ago or 2 years ago, we once have the youngest individual to be in a government body, in which case his name is Syed Saddiq, he was the Minister of Youth and Sports. He promoted under the guise of other youths as well who want to promote who want to lessen the age of voting from 21 to 18, in which case it has finally passed. And now Undi 18's next agenda is to promote more and more youths to vote for Sabah, in which case Sabah currently right now is facing a huge political discourse around there, and they want to promote more people to vote, because no matter which side of the political spectrum you are, voting is a right and you should not squander your vote. That's the most important part. So, and youth advocacy isn't an easy thing. And most people, when you're looking at this video, you want to start a youth advocacy, you want to start a movement. Here are the tools that you can try initiating those types of issues, which is one, what is your issue? You have to find your issue and what you stand for. So finding an issue that you're passionate about and that motivates you to create sustainable action-based strategy in making the issues heard and shared in your community. And one of the most influential UNICEF speaker from Malaysia that I've ever heard is, you can scream and shout all you want, but you have to make sure, are you heard? So you have to know what's your issue and try to know that that issue is very detrimental to the survivability of that specific community. Second, we need to start engaging with policy. Youth-focused policies are the factors towards solving an issue for a sustainable future. By engaging in the policy process with substantial research and support based on those issues. You cannot press on an issue if you don't conduct any research or support based on those issues. And because of that, we need to build a movement. Find out what is important to them and what would get them interested in supporting your issue or your work. If you cannot build a movement, if you cannot have your own specific community that backs you up on these issues and tells you that this issue is a detrimental thing, that we should really provide a policy and solution to this, then it's hard for you to have legs when you're standing. And lastly, when you want to push for youth advocacy, is meeting with decision makers. these are one of the things that I learned as part of Malaysian delegation, in which case you have to go to conferences like these. You have to meet the key decision makers that influence these decisions and helps you on your way to change and make a policy that can really be helpful to an issue and towards the community that is affected by the issue. So please, if any of you youths looking at this video, please know who the decision makers are and try to approach them towards the issue and make a change from it. So one of the things that I want to talk about is that peace is more than an end to war and violence. It is the promotion of economies, actions, behaviors, and laws consistent with the culture of peace. It's not about ending wars and violence, it's about promoting for economies and actions and behaviors. So in a way, we have to move beyond what peace on the surface level or what peace stands for and move towards how we can promote economies and actions based on the culture of peace. Now I want to talk about my experience last year, which is two organizations that I've involved in and that opened my eyes into raising these types of issues. First, I was lucky enough to be part of Jane Goodall's Roots and Shoots. If you don't know who's Jane Goodall, Jane Goodall is a scientist, in which case she works under primates, specifically chimpanzees, and is a primary advocate for climate change and also animal protection. So one of the key things I helped is I joined RIMAU, which is a Malay non-profit organization, in which case for Malayan tiger preservation advocacy. So in this picture, one of my teammates is trying to teach the then Prince of Selangor, Tengku Amir Shah, which apparently has a degree in ecology and environmental biology, about the current issues for Malayan tigers and how currently right now in Malaysia, we have only less than 400 Malayan tigers currently in the wild, which is very, very, very sad. And secondly, I joined another group which is called Malaysian Primatological Society, in which case I had to volunteer under the west coast side of Peninsula Malaysia. I was volunteering under the palm oil estate to study pig-tailed macaques. And as if you can see this picture, you can clearly see that you have this macaque and this is my teammate. She's not admiring the macaque, she's actually standing as a statue, because what you're looking at is an alpha male. And if you care about your safety, please maintain your distance and don't provoke the alpha male. And from my research on that, studying about pig-tailed macaques, is that currently right now, most palm oil estate managers are willing to kill these pig-tailed macaques because they consider themselves as an annoyance. But studies have shown, based from my time on the Malaysian Primatological Society, is that these macaques are essential as a natural rodent / snake killer to maintain a steady, good palm oil ecosystem. So hopefully with this research, we want to promote more and more pig-tailed macaques because they are currently right now endangered, and that we can provide them as a natural rodent / snake killer for palm oil estates as well. And lastly, from Jane Goodall's Roots and Shoots, I was taught how important it is to have a central forest spine, in which case currently right now Malaysia has a very fragmented central forest spine, which is important for animals to migrate, to find food and resource, and to maintain their habitat. In which case, further and further down the road, more and more developments occur, and deforestation continues to be a problem in Malaysia, so that each and every animal, that they can't easily migrate each other, and they're trapped in an island filled with roads. So it's important for us to create a movement where we want to initiate more and more change for the Malaysian government to continue saving the Central Forest Pine. Lastly, this is a program related to IYC. I was part of an initiative called My Core, in which is a Malaysian version of the United States of America's Peace Corps, in which I was one of the 40 batch of Malaysian youths from the age of 18 to 30 who were sent to 4 countries under Southeast Asia, where we want to conduct humanitarian aid towards those places, especially towards small villages. I was lucky enough to get selected to Laos, in which sadly they've suffered. They're not one of them. They're being the most heavily bombed country in the world, with 2 million tons of bombs caused by the US during the height of the Vietnam War. I was literally situated near the Vietnam border on the southern part of Laos called Savaniket, where we advised not to go off the roads where people have never stepped on. So it's very, very, very dangerous. You can see some of my teammates, they have to go walk on places where it's of course obvious that there's someone walked upon. There's an immediate danger that wherever you go, there are empty bombshells, but there's still active bombs everywhere and around Laos, but specifically near the Vietnam border. So I was there looking at people who I barely understand, but I was forced to know what's the current issue. Put into your shoes on what they've been going through, despite the fact that you're from Malaysia and that you're experiencing a much more healthy lifestyle compared to them. So you have to put into their shoes and what they want and what they need. In which case, we've implemented a water distribution system throughout the whole village in terms of very specific spots such as a clinic, the office, and the schools, where we give them clean, filtered water. So those are one of the things that we've initiated in My Core. So these are one of the things that I volunteered upon, and where I've learned how youth advocacy works and how we should approach and see from their shoes on how we can implement these types of issues to both local and the government. I have to communicate in Laos. I have to communicate willingly to the Laos government on how we can approach these villages, because there was a lot of friction between going to the villages and helping the people there, because despite the fact we truly want to help them, the government are not convinced and that we should further need help, especially during that time we actually have help from the Malaysian Embassy of Laos, and that's crucial when it comes to these types of social issues. So please, when you're doing an impact to an environment, when you're volunteering, especially into another country, do talk to your embassies. So right now we're doing a webinar, and that's whenever we think about volunteering, it's hard, especially in certain countries that have a huge cases of COVID-19 victims. So right now, what I want to talk about is volunteering in a post-COVID-19 world. How can we do that right now? So as you can see here from the World Economic Forum and Southeast Asia, based from the ASEAN Youth Survey 2020 edition, you can see remote working eased by constraint. The dark blue statistics are those which are facing difficulty, while the blue ones are not facing any difficulty. So you can see clearly team management, internet quality, motivation, government regulation, logistics, and supply all of these are difficult when it comes to working remotely and working online in this current COVID-19 pandemic. So to move forward, if we want to continue to make change, if we want to continue to make volunteering as part of solving a cause and solving a social issue, we have to heed these 3 steps, which I think is important. First and foremost, as much as we would love to have more and more volunteers, we must convert from volunteers to donors. Non-profits still need funding to provide as much support as possible to the committees. As a decrease in volunteers are willing to provide their time during this pandemic, especially towards, maintaining your social distancing and your prioritize on your health, it's important to convert your volunteers to donors, because NGOs, nonprofits still need funds if they want to do their social change. Second, communication with volunteers. Please, 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 whatever it is, despite the fact how easy it is to just call and make an online meeting, it is important to really strengthen your communication with volunteers. Be transparent with your volunteers, and by ensuring clear instruction flexibility, offer information about other ways to give and information about how they can help. You can really do a lot if you can strengthen your communication and try to motivate people who really want to help, and in other ways where they can help in a safe manner. And third wise, and this is the most important, protecting volunteers from coronavirus. The goal is to provide needed support to the community while protecting internal and external stakeholders at the same time. I remember there was one lucky Malaysian who specifically helped refugees in Malaysia. And the number one worry that she faces is, will my volunteers be safe? As much as we want to help other people, and the most important thing is, can we help ourselves? So maintaining social distancing, providing masks for each volunteers, providing enough volunteers. As much as, despite the fact you have 50 volunteers, due to SOPs in Malaysia, you can only have 20 because you cannot have more people in one building. So maintain protecting your volunteers, because if no one is out there helping you, who's going to help the people who are definitely in need? So in closing my presentation, I would like to provide a quote from the great Greta Thunberg, in which currently right now she got back in Sweden and is still protesting to this day in front of a Swedish parliament on the issues of climate change. She said, you must take action. You must do the impossible, because giving up is never an option. So yeah, that's my presentation. Continue to volunteer despite the pandemic. Create change towards both local and a national level. Thank you. Back to you, Regine.
Sherryman.
Yep.
Good to finally see your face because
Hi.
connecting through Messenger. I'm really so proud of your presentation. I think you covered a lot of different lenses. Like you spoke about young people having to engage governments. So, not working in silos, like young people, as if sometimes, we tend to live in a bubble when young people work among ourselves, but then we have to see ourselves as part of a larger, we're part of larger structures. And so we need to learn how to do intergenerational conversations. So you mentioned different stakeholders, and then you mentioned also the private sector. I think that's quite important to look at how you, what did you say? Like, how do you convert volunteers to, what was
Donors.
the exact word? You said convert volunteers to something, to donors. Exactly.
Donors,
yeah. I don't know if we have time for like one-on-one Q&A, but I'll have a question for the two of you maybe after the other speaker presents, because we're running out of time. But yeah, thank you so much. And then of course you also touched on volunteers and COVID, so it's like a really good contextualization of young people's participation in your country and also in the region. So thank you. Okay,
No
so
worries.
from Ferryman, we have a female speaker, and she is from a neighboring region, shall I say? So we have ASEAN, and I think her country is part of SAARC, so it's South Asian neighbors. It's Miss Rauman Smita. Miss Rauman Smita is the founder and president of Global Law Thinker Society, a global multi-professional network working for SDG, human development and empowerment, leadership, environmental development, and community building. This network is identifying common world issues, solutions, goals, impact, and actions accordingly. She is also promoting and inspiring youth organizations and young leaders to come forward and build a compassionate world. So Attorney Smita, she is with the Supreme Court of Bangladesh and CEO of the law firm Law Thinkers. So she probably be able to give us a different perspective or different lens in this discussion. Attorney Smita, are you here with us?
Yes, yes. Am I audible clearly?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me, and I thank all the guests and greetings to all the present guests and the speakers. So I have just listened about what our previous speakers and the guests speak on this piece and how we can establish it and how our youth can get engaged and take action. As I'm working with the young people, and I have some experience through my organization and through my profession, so I will share my own experience. I'm not presenting any presentation, but I will talk about some key points that how our targeted people who we should target for peace building or establishing peace, and how we can establish this, and what are the solutions, some actions, what kind of actions we can take. So these are the topics I'm going to talk about. My topic was youth engagement for peace. So as a lawyer, and also when I study about right, so I know that and I believe that peace is our birthright. We deserve this peace all the way, because when we born with peace, and peace is what we are from our childhood, or from our birth. We are supposed to work for peace and establish peace. So to build this peace, I believe that young people, they should be our main stakeholder to establish peace from this at this present world. And why youth? Why we should target youth? We should target youth because youth are the energy, the power. They are the learners, and they are the change makers. This is why youth can change the whole world. They only can learn, and same time they can take the action with their own energy and the power. And if I go forward for how we can engage youth, as this is my main topic, that how we can engage youth. And our organization, Global Law Thinkers Society, this organization is working for youth empowerment and youth development, and same time sustainable development goals. And through this organization and all my activities, what I have found some core reasons that how we can engage them, how we can involve them in peace or any other sustainable development goals. So this is it, that the first point is that we have to educate our youth so that they understand their right and peace same time. So how to educate them? It is not only the young people, not only the youth. Rather, I will say that the age from 7+ years, these children from this childhood, they can study about peace and their rights, and so that they can prepare their future. So we need massive educational engagement. We can put this topic so that the young generation, very young generation, the children and the young people and the youth can understand what is peace, and how they can, how the issues are going around our world, and how they can engage themselves. And the main point is that sometimes we just, as a human being, we are engaged in so many things. We are studying. Mostly we feel like as a young people, I have seen that many people go to study, not for gaining knowledge, not for understanding the depth of life, and not to understand how the world is going around us. Rather, they focus on earning mostly, and they take the subjects as they just want to get the certificates, and they get passed, and they get a good job. But uh, at present world, what we are seeing, that we are so much connected. We are so much connected, and we cannot make our children to think selfishly. We are connected so much to each other, not only a country, rather all the countries are connected, all the people around the world are connected. So this connection, they must understand that they cannot be so selfish and just work for their own benefit. Rather, every benefit they want, they should contribute in the society. So education for peace building, or education for any further development around the world, we need this education. We need the education system should be promoting young people understanding towards the world, towards peace, towards the development. And then the next point is to prepare them for leadership. Now we see that in this current world, the young generation, they can think really deep. There was a time when the world was not this much difficult, but day by day, the world is getting more difficult. So it is very important that we prepare our young generation for their own leadership. And this leadership is not like subordinate leadership. Rather, this leadership should be like they can take their hold on the ground, and same time they can hold another people's hand so that they can bring them on the ground. So we should prepare and promote leadership, young generation leadership. Youth should come to lead their own life, lead their own community, and can become a change maker, a youngster, and they can influence their own generation to bring some changes, some positive changes. And the third point is that engage them. How we can engage them? The first I said that educate the people. When the young generation get education, when they prepare to, understand this peace and world situation going on, and then they prepare themselves as a leader so that they can hold themselves. And the third is engagement, so they can take action. They have to understand that they have the responsibility. They are young or they are children, doesn't mean they are not part of this situation, ongoing situation. To make a change, a positive change in whole world, we need each and every person engagement, if it is a baby or it is a old person or the young person. So we need to make them understand that what are the responsibility of them, and at their age, what kind of responsibility they can take. So they need the proper knowledge and open knowledge, and they can think deeper so that they prepare to take the action. Like we know something, but we do not take action. We know the issues around the world. We read news. We are seeing troubles around the world. Even in our community, we see the trouble, but we are not taking action. This is because we are not engaging ourselves in the problems. So education, preparation, and engage is the three key points I have found, that how we can make the young people involved with the peace development, peace establishment, and spreading the peace. So there are some solutions that how we can give the power to the young people so that they can take the action. Now we know that we have to take the action, but what are the actions we should take and how we can take? So what I have found through my experience is that to support young people organization, there are many organization, volunteer organization, charitable organizations are founding by many young people. So we should bring them forward according to their work and their intention. If they get more support, they can really become a change maker and establish peace. Then the next point is unite and collaboration. When they have the organization, they have the support from other organizations, they can do the big things. Like some people have a community organization. He's just, that person is working in a community, but when they are collaborating worldwide with a different organization from different part of the world, they can exchange knowledge, and they can organize many kind of programs together to establish peace around the world. So it will not be limited to only the country or not only to the community for peace building, rather through uniting and collaboration, massive movement and massive programs can be organized by these young people. And the next solution is that give them global platform to express their issues, exchange their knowledge and ideas, and create opportunity to take action. Like, as I said, that collaboration in uniting is a key point. And then if we can give them a global platform, this platform where they can express their issues, the small issues they're facing, so that they can also discuss it with the other part of the world, and they also can share their knowledge and they can give new ideas. And this is how they can create opportunities to take action. Like, they will know their, I mean, they will identify their problems, they will know what to do, and they can plan for that, and then they will be able to take the action to move forward. And the last thing I have found is that decentralization, these actions, and work through the network. So what is decentralizing action? Decentralizing action is that it is not only the center of a country will organize programs, or only the remote areas they are developing, but rather each area, each small area, we can decentralize the power, we can empower them, we can educate them, and we can help them to build their own organization, own volunteer team, and own network to work for the peace development and peace establishment. So these are the 4 points I have found, the solution that how we can engage the people. Those I'm just repeating again, that support the young people who are establishing their organization. They need support a lot, and they are really working well. So I will request all the organizations who are working, they can support, educate them, and unite and collaboration for massive movement and program organization. So all other organization, international or national or local, those organizations, they all can unite and collaborate, and they can start working and take action all together. And then there is the give them a global platform, this platform where they can speak about their issues, they can exchange knowledge and ideas, and they create the opportunity, and they move forward for the action. And the last is that decentralized actions, that not only city or only the remote areas in a bigger way, rather small areas we can divide, we can create the network. And this is how dividing the areas, they can establish peace very well. And at the last, what I would say, this is my closing. Again, I want to just say that the only way we can establish anything, we can move forward, we can bring a positive change in the society, in the country, in the world, is that if we can unite, if we can collaborate, if we can join our hands together, and we start movement all together, this is how we can bring a positive change in the whole world. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Attorney Smita. I think I really like how you closed it about working together, working in solidarity. So it's almost like practicing what we preach, as peace builders, like people who advocate for peace. Sometimes we notice that within our own circles, like in the UN or even in NGOs, like we see bureaucratic institutional competition, or even competition. So it's really important that we also practice. Okay, so for any question, but that came out of the two speakers was on meaningful youth engagement, of course, because that's the topic of this webinar. And I wonder really, because this is the topic also of our next webinar, the one that we're hosting. We're entitling it as Local, Regional, and Decolonial Approaches to Youth Peace and Security. And since Dr. Roman Shukov couldn't join us due to an emergency, he's from Friends for Leadership. And this is really something that Friends for Leadership tries to espouse, like a horizontal platform for young people to be engaged in decision-making spaces as the next generation of leaders. But I wonder, the question is, how do we ensure that when we encourage young people to go into these global spaces and even regional spaces, that we preserve their lived realities, like we preserve indigenous knowledge, we pay respect to like national or even intercultural identities and cultures, and we don't make youth homogenous, especially through multilateral institutions and globalization. So how do we preserve local knowledge, especially in ASEAN, and I'm sure in South Asia too. In Asia, like we're very very diverse region, and we've known peace and security even before the UN Security Council resolutions on youth peace and security were passed. Like in Southeast Asia, our peace processes in Bangsamoro, in Aceh, in Patani, they were all youth led, and they were all from the bottom up. So these are things that we can bring to the global versus the global necessarily just teaching us what the universal language or principles are. So I guess I'll just throw it out if anybody would want to answer, like how do we encourage meaningful youth engagement and youth agency so that we stay true to our identities and we become also knowledge holders, not just knowledge receivers. I don't know if Shariman or Attorney Smita want to say something about that. Shariman, are you still here?
Yeah. Can you repeat back the question?
So the question is really about meaningful youth engagement. Like on one hand, so that we don't, I think on one hand, so we basically don't get tokenized, and we make sure that young people has really agency. Like we're able to also contribute opinions and not just receive instructions. So that becomes really a meaningful interaction.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so based from my slides just now, it's all about mutual respect. I know it's a bit hard when you're talking to someone that's younger than you, and because of the Asian perception of like, okay, I'm older, I should be more respected. So it's that social stigma that we're facing right now. Even though we do have a platform for youths who have a say in it, who have various types of opinions, because again, 20 years from now, we're not going to be youths anymore. 20 years from now, we are still going to live in this country. 20 years from now, we're still going to face these issues if it's not going to be done today. So despite certain societies, certain figures who choose not to listen to the youths, I guess that's the current issue right now that we're trying to face, and hopefully they're willing to listen. Just like Greta fought for her voice, maybe we have to fight ours as well.
Yeah, that's great. It's an emphasis again on intergenerational. So I guess we also need to learn to listen. At the same time, we need to speak for ourselves. So it's two ways, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I wonder if Attorney Smita wants to add maybe more about the cultural part. Like how do we ensure not just youth, but like since you work more on the mainstream, like how do we ensure local agency when we go to the global or like globalization. We work with the UN, which is primarily a global institution. How do we make sure that we preserve the cultures, the identities, the experience of our local communities? Oh, I think she got disconnected. So I wonder, Shariman, do you want to add to that? How do you balance, for instance, in Magic, you balance the experiences of local, national youth, even just ASEAN youth, and then when you go to the global?
Oh man, it's a bit hard because you have to learn other countries' situations as well. Philippines and Malaysia are two different countries, despite the fact we kind of have the same Austronesian racial similarities, but we're very different in terms of government, in terms of beliefs, in terms of how we talk as well. But as my time in parts of ASEAN organizations such as ASEAN Leadership Association, what I've learned is that empathy and sympathy are two important factors that we need to learn, and that you have to put the effort to know about other countries' situations, especially Regine's statement about youth youth policy change in Aceh and such. So I applaud for people who really know about our country, other country situation, which sets forth towards more and more people to learn more about ASEAN in general. Because for one thing, I'm personally embarrassed about, especially going to Laos. Laos is one of the top countries who knows more about ASEAN compared to us Malaysians. I'm still quite shocked that people from rural villages in Laos is like, Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. If you ask me before this, if you ask me what's the capital of Laos, I wouldn't answer that question. Honestly, yeah, it's the knowledge of your country brethren and ASEAN in general. That's the important part.
That's great, Chairman. So we discussed intergenerational, and then now we're discussing intercultural. So they're really multi-layers. It's really pieces about bringing everyone together. So it's good that we're able to use different lenses during this discussion. Okay, so we are nearing the end of our program, and it will be our pleasure to call upon our closing remarks. Professor Dr. Denison Jayasuriya, co-chair of Malaysia CSO SDG Alliance. He is the head of the Secretariat for the APPGM SDG and an associate fellow at the Institute of Ethnic Studies, National University of Malaysia. He received the UN Malaysia Award in 2017 for his role in the promotion of SDGs. Yang bahagya, Professor Dr. Denison, please.
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Regine, for that kind words of introduction. And thank you to the panel. Young panel, but very thoughtful, very impressive presentations from different dimensions and aspects. Very much committed to SDGs, drawing not just from theoretical thoughts, but also from experience. And I think this is a significant discussion. It's a pity that one of the speakers from another context, I think we had ASEAN, we had South Asia, and then if we had, Russia or another context, it might have added further, but it was still very meaningful with the very good interventions from Regine. I thought you had very comprehensive and very good understanding of the theme. I thought Shariman's presentation on youth and advocacy was quite significant. As an older person, I'm always impressed with younger people's PowerPoint designs, and not only the design, but also I felt the content of mobilizing youth for peace was very significant, and the themes that was highlighted. And likewise, Ms. Romans from Bangladesh on peace. I think your link of peace, and because of your legal background to a rights framework, I think it's very important to link that together. And the whole emphasis on education and engagement was also very important. And I think thirdly, in the course of discussion, Regine and Shariman actually discussed quite a bit on young people in the international space, preserving local knowledge and so forth. That's important. I think Mr. Stefan, in his opening, linking peace and SDG, and also stating the UN commitment to youth involvement is quite significant. Now, of course, with young people's discussion, and it was very interesting that the final point was linking intergenerational networking. That means it's not just having one generation dominate or suppressing another generation, but to see the interconnectedness and to see how young people can add value to older people, and older people likewise. And I thought that was quite a strong, but we didn't have enough questions. I noticed in the Facebook, there were not many questions coming to this very important dimension. I wanted to draw 2 points in this context of discussion. And yesterday, my wife and I, because we are now grandparents, had the opportunity to take my granddaughter, who is 6 years old, to tell us what she likes to eat and where she likes to go. And she defined what we wanted to do, what would be the menu. And we had a fascinating conversation with her. And I thought it's important as grandparents and someone who's past 65 to value the next generation. And grandparents' role can be quite interesting. So the link to intergenerational is quite important. And I want to draw some points from my granddaughter, because as I sat and listened to her, I realized that here was a little girl who was cutting across 4 civilizations. Because I'm Malaysian, while Malaysian, Sri Lankan Tamil of Jaffna background, and my wife is actually Fuzhou Chinese, and our daughter then is mixed, and so our granddaughter likewise would be. And my daughter married a Malaysian Malayali Indian. And so four countries are interlinking this little child. And so one automatically realizes that multiple identities are central, appreciation of diversity, and a child growing in a multicultural setting like Malaysia, with multi-religious, multi-ethnic, and within the home itself, people of different cultural backgrounds. And that links to the point that I think Romana brought out, that education's to start at 7. But I think for those of us who are parents and grandparents, actually education starts right from birth. And so the child comes into and learns attitudes and values that the parents or grandparents instill, of hatred, of love, of appreciation, of diversity, of richness of culture, and so forth. And I think it is here that the theme of the family, the school, and society is central in nurturing and building the next generation. I hear what Shariman raised just now, whether older people would listen to them or not. And I think that's a fair point in our kinds of very male-dominated, patriarchal kind, which is fast breaking down with the COVID and much linked to Zoom and interaction. The breakdown of the traditional forms have emerged. But I would agree that in the intergenerational creation of space, it is now really crucial for older people to work with younger people, at the same time sharing and enabling a creative space, and then seeing in the peace process, like how Shariman went to Laos, or when I was young, I went to many places, and even now in my travels through multicultural context, that young people be given the space, whether at school, whether at the universities, whether in civil society, to have the voice, to have an opportunity. And Malaysia recently witnessed the online parliament that young people put up as an alternative to the physical parliament, and also the youth parliament. They did an online parliament which was well featured online and with huge participation. So I think, as was already highlighted from Dr. Maliki, Dr. Stefan, the three panelists, and the two panelists and the moderator, it's very clear that young people are the future, and the young people need to take it on a different space, because it's the older ones who now rule and are messing up the world, whether it's in health, whether it's in economic, whether it is in addressing poverty and inequality. But I think the younger generation needs to take up the space at the global level, regional level, local level. And I hope that this discussion has provided such a stimulus, and linking peace to the rights framework, linking peace to development, peace to conflict resolutions. And I hope we can build on these and have more such opportunities of discussion together. Thank you for this opportunity, and happy International Peace Day, and let's look forward to far greater changes. I know the UN, as Mr. Stefan has said, has a whole day, I think it's from 9 a.m. New York time to 9 p.m., that all the leaders of the world would speak on UN 75, where peace is central, especially in the in the COVID period as well. So those are my words. Thank you. And thank you to all the participants who, the speakers who spoke well and articulated the points. And I hope we can build on this and build a better society, better communities for all peoples of the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. Dato Tennyson. And thank you to all our speakers who joined us today. I am now in my car on my way to the next webinar
Oh, okay.
today. I think I just really want to express my gratitude to not only our high-level speakers, but just people we look up to as mentors, as young people, like we've been talking about how this is supposed to be an intergenerational discussion and collaboration. So we've always been, I think that's such a trait that we share in our region, where there's a culture of mentorship and intergenerational exchange. So that's something that we appreciate, and especially for IYC and IYC for Peace. We've been working closely with them in different themes, especially in peace and security through Asian Youth Peace Network and IYC for Peace. So I wonder if there's anybody else who wishes to say something, or shall we close the session? if there's nothing else, then
Yeah.
I think we can invite.
From OIC, I want to say thank you to Mr. Stefan. Thank you very much, Dato', for your time. See you. Thank you, Smita.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
We'll see you at the next webinar.
Yeah,
at
thank you.
7:30.
Thank you. See you. See you. Thank you. Bye
Happy
bye.
International Peace Day to everyone. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Assalamualaikum.
International Peace
Jumpa
Day.
lagi.
Jumpa lagi.